Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما إنك على شيء قدير. So, we are starting Surah the Muwatta as narrated and as commented upon by Imam al-Shafi'i. So Imam al-Shafi'i did not narrate the Muwatta as a hadith book, right? Just like the authors of the six books, Imam Shafi'i is using the content of the Muwatta, and he's not narrating the Muwatta as a Muwatta. Okay, so this is a key concept we need to understand. There's material, okay, facts, hadiths, concepts, fiqh points, okay, and then there's organization of that material. So it is very, very common that somebody comes along, they get information, they organize it in one way. Somebody comes along, gets that information, reorganizes it with a bunch of other information. Okay, so that's what we see, for example, with the Muwatta and the six books, with the Muwatta and Imam Shafi'i, with the Muwatta and the Muwatta of Imam Muhammad. Okay, so people are getting the Imam Malik has a book or a loose book or a kind of teaching book, like not every Muwatta that he dictated is the same, but basically it's a kind of a somewhat of a standard. And then somebody comes, they narrate that from him, and they narrate it to the next generation. But that next generation does not necessarily narrate it in that same format. They might merge it with other things. They might cut things out of it that they don't feel relevant, that they don't want to share, they don't think it's important. Okay, so this is how basically, even before the six books, you have the Jawami', right? The Jami' of Sufyan ibn Uyayna, the Jami' of Sufyan al-Thawri, right? The books, Imam Bukhari says, the first things he memorized were the books of Abdullah Mubarak. So maybe Abdullah Mubarak has books that have certain things in it, a hadith like this, for sort of position stories from the Sahaba and Tabi'een, and then Imam Bukhari uses that information and puts it in different places. So you're not seeing the book as it is necessarily. It could be the book and more, or it could be the book and less, right? The Jami' of Ma'mar ibn Rashid, right? That was a book. So that book is basically found in the Musannaf of Abdul Razzaq San'ani. But in reality, it's not all there. So the last chapter basically of the Musannaf of Abdul Razzaq San'ani is basically the Jami' of Ma'mar ibn Rashid. But actually the Jami' of Ma'mar ibn Rashid is actually bigger. So Abdul Razzaq, the Abdul Razzaq San'ani, he either edited it, meaning he narrated it from his teacher, and then just selected certain things he wanted to share or put into his book, or maybe the author himself had different versions. Okay, so this is a key concept. So that's number one. And number two, we have to understand that there is these key powerhouses of hadith. Okay, key powerhouses of hadith, certain magnets who were very, very significant at the time of Imam Malik and a bit before. Okay, so who are these people? These are these people whose hadith everybody is narrating from. So we might not have their books, but everybody is going to these 5 or 6 people, right? So basically the whole world is traveling to these people. So number one, Malik, right? The whole world is traveling to Malik to narrate his hadiths, meaning what he's narrating from the Prophet ﷺ, Sahaba and Tabi'een. Okay? So people are coming from Spain, people are coming from Central Asia, people are coming from Iraq, people are coming all over the place. Okay, that's Imam Malik. Who else do we have? We have Hamad ibn Salama, right? So Hamad ibn Salama, his hadiths, he's of that same generation, approximately. He's like the teachers of the author of the 6 books. So they're traveling around the world trying to find people who studied with Hamad ibn Salama. And Hamad ibn Salama is narrating hadiths, right? So we have, who else did we mention? So Malik, Hamad ibn Salama, Hamad ibn Zayd. So Hamad ibn Zayd, very keen hadith. You find him all the time in the six books, right? So everybody is traveling around. So you're going to find lots of different people narrating from Hamad ibn Zayd, right? But basically everyone's trying to find that hadith. So you could write a book called The Musnad of Hamad ibn Zayd, i.e. the hadith that he narrates from the Prophet ﷺ, Sahaba and Tabi'in, write his book. And you kind of have a good idea of the information that he was sharing with people as they visited him throughout the world. Okay? So we mentioned, so write these guys down. Okay, Malik, Hamad ibn Salama, Hamad ibn Zayd, As-Sufyanan, right? Sufyan ibn Uyayna and Sufyan al-Thawri, right? They're not really the same age. Sufyan ibn Uyayna is like, Sufyan ibn Thawri is like a generation before Sufyan ibn Uyayna, but they are huge powerhouses, right? Huge powerhouses. Look in the six books, you're going to find Sufyan ibn Uyayna all the time, Sufyan al-Thawri all the time, okay? Imam Shafi'i will frequently narrate the same hadith from Imam Malik or Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Okay, so Sufyan ibn Uyayna is originally Iraqi, but he's in the Hijaz, and Sufyan al-Thawri is Kufi, right? Many of his fatwa and his hadith are the same as the Kufans. So we have Malik, Hamad ibn Salama, Hamad ibn Zayd, Sufyanan, Sufyan al-Thawri, and Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? So there was something called the Jami' of Sufyan, right? The Jami' of the Sufyan. That was a book. People used to narrate it. We don't have it. But again, you could basically put it together. You go through the six books, find a hadith that are narrated by Sufyan al-Thawri, and that's basically at least the hadith content, the marfu hadith content of Sufyan al-Thawri. Okay. So we have Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, and then we can add to that then Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj. Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, he's kind of like the father of hadith criticism, right? Same kind of time as Sufyan al-Thawri, and really important. He comes up a lot. Who else can we add to that? That's basically it, right? And there are other powerhouses before them, right? Before them, like az-Zuhri, right? You're going to see him a lot in the hadiths of Malik, like az-Zuhri, like that's kind of before them, like Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba, like Ibn Qatada ibn Da'ama Sadusi and others. But these are these kind of key people. So if you can now let's think about the six books then. Okay, the six books then come along and they are studying with the students of these people. Okay, so we have these powerhouses, and then the authors of the six books, they are traveling around collecting these people's hadiths and other hadiths as well, right? There's also other people as well. And putting them into their own structure. So what's significant about the six books is that A, they comprise most of the Sahih hadiths, and B is the order that is like well organized. Like it's edited data. It's not just right. So you read the Musnad of Musnad of Imam Ahmad, 30,000 hadith. It's a bit difficult to kind of read it and understand what should I do because it's not organized by topic. But the six books are organized per topic, right? Okay, so we'll answer that question, inshallah. So can we list the names, please? Who do we have? Malik ibn Anas. Who else do we have?
Hamad ibn Salman, Hamad ibn Zayd.
Hamad ibn Salama. Yeah, Hamad ibn Salama, Hamad ibn Zayd. Good. Who else do we have now? The two Sufyans. What are their names?
Sufyan ibn Uyayna wa Thawri.
Sufyan ibn Uyayna and Sufyan al-Thawri. Good. Right. And Sufyan al-Thawri is basically a generation before Sufyan ibn Uyayna, but they share many shuyukh and even some narrators. And then who else do we have?
Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj.
Right, Hajjaj. Okay. So Ad-Darimi, if I remember correctly, Ad-Darimi says that, like he says, somebody who doesn't have the hadith, like you don't have the hadiths of Malik, you don't have the hadith of Shu'bah, you don't have the hadiths of Sufyan ibn Uyayna or Sufyan. the Hamadan and the Sufyana. You don't have their hadiths. So what do you have, bro? Like you don't have any hadiths, right? He said they're bankrupt or something like that. He's for home muflis. Like you don't have anything, right? So that's what basically these are the so now if you look at Malik, right? If you look at Malik, then so his hadiths are he is very 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 he is number one. He, basically, out of all of them, he is the greatest. Go ahead, Ahmad.
Yeah, sorry. So these like I guess powerhouses that I'm referring to are like with respect to what time period? Like, is it basically we're just saying contemporaries of Madik, I
So
guess?
they are the students of the young tabi'in.
Okay.
Yeah. So you will have key people. So their shuyukh are students of the Sahaba or students of the students of the Sahaba.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could say these are the muhaddithin of the like the main ones of the third generation.
Uh, yeah, we wouldn't label them as so third generation, but we don't label them. Yeah, we could label it as third generation. But so we have in hadith we have something called tabaqat, right? So the
Mm.
tabaqat we would put them in we would not put them under three though. So the tabaqat we have one, two, three, four. So we have basically the tabaqat of the Sahaba, and then you've got basically four for the tabi'een, and then four for the tabi'een. So they're coming like after that. So they're coming in like 6, 7 kind of that 6, 7 kind of time, right? But yeah, they are kind of like so like Malik studies with so like Malik is a student of Zuhri, who's a student of Anas. So Anas Sahabi, Zuhri Tabi'i, Malik student of a Tabi'i. But that's like a very short chain, right? Because Zuhri is actually very, very so Anas lived for a long time, right? He lived like longer than many of the Tabi'in, even though it's a Sahabi, right? So it's a kind of to put it into like to say third generation, that's not what we would normally call it, right? Um, it's not what we'd normally call it, but it is roughly like that. So if you can think of basically um, early Sahaba, um, so like Sahaba passing away from like the year 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. That's like the Sahaba, basically. And then the Tabi'een is like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 120, kind of that time, right?
Mm.
Like, so you can find like key people like 120, 125, 130 that of the Tabi'een. And then you're gonna have like another generation and then kind of Malik and people like that. So you might find a very short chain, but that's not normally the picture, right? So Imam Malik, he is studying with Tabi'een and Atba' Tabi'een,
Mhm.
right? So here's another classic chain, for example, Malik from Urwa ibn Zubayr, sorry, Malik from Hisham ibn Urwa, from Urwa ibn Zubayr, the nephew of Aisha. So you can imagine Sahabi, her nephew's son, Imam Malik, right? That's a kind of a classic chain. Um, Malik, Abdul Rahman ibn Qasim ibn Muhammad. So you have Muhammad, basically the youngest child of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, right? He didn't raise him because he had passed away already. So it's like a super young child of Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Muhammad, his son, Qasim, his son, Abdul Rahman, and then Malik. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Right? Okay. So what's significant about Malik? Number one is he's a faqih. Number two, his hadiths are super clean, right? His hadiths are super clean. So we will see that other people's hadiths, there's a lot more mistakes in them, right? So Imam Malik doesn't make many mistakes at all, basically. So people make mistakes, right? Like Sufyan al-Thawri will make a mistake. Shu'bah will make a mistake, you know. The joke is that Shu'bah is a hadith critic, but his hadith criticism can apply to himself, right? We can actually apply his principles to himself. That's how objective is. Like he made mistakes too, right? Whereas Imam Malik, it's like it's a really good place to start because the hadiths are all clean, without mistakes. They don't have extra information. You don't find, oh, this has an extra thing that no one else narrates, right? So Imam Malik is very, very conservative in hadith narration, very, very accurate. And basically, or everybody, like 99% of everybody he narrates from is a thiqah. So Imam Ahmad was asked, what do you think about so-and-so? He says, oh, Imam Malik narrates from him. I.e., if Imam Malik narrates from him, that's good enough. So it's, in a curriculum, you can't do everything, right? But you can choose the most useful things to do, right? When you invest money, you can't buy everything, but you can find the best things to invest in. So one of these really useful things to invest in is the Muwatta of Imam Malik, because it's basically the hadiths in it, are basically about 500 Sahih hadiths. Those hadiths are then transferred into the 6 books through his students and his students' students, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, Bukhari, Muslim, etc. And they become the core of the 6 books. And it's not just the core in terms of hadith, but it's the core in terms of structure. And where does structure come from? Structure comes from understanding. So I just have raw hadiths. Again, look at the Muslim Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad's a hadith faqih, no question. I'm super muhaddith. But it's not organized. The book, Muslim Imam Ahmad, is not organized based on fiqh. So you are studying fiqh, or you want to write a hadith collection. You have to spend a ridiculous amount of time with the Muslim Imam Ahmad to process it. Okay, to process it. Whereas the Muwatta is a processed book. You see somebody who is a product of processing fiqh, right? He's gone through this fiqh process of what do hadith mean, which hadiths go over other thing, what's the topics, what's the interesting things. He's organized the structure, and then it's super sahih. Okay, so it's a really useful starting point, right? The Muwatta is a really useful starting point, for which reason Qadi Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, he says that the Muwatta is the core, and Bukhari is like the next level, and then Tirmidhi is a level around that. I.e., you've got the Muwatta, which is this really important starting point, and then key, really Sahih hadith that might agree or disagree with Imam Malik, right? So sometimes there might be some hadith in Bukhari that, yeah, we know that the Muwatta fills Bukhari, but there's other hadiths that might come from other powerhouses that might go against Imam Malik, right? Or go against those hadiths. And then there's the next level, which is hadiths which are less sahih, but pretty important. So you're going to get a different level, right? So when you have this, like, when you have these 3 levels, like you started with Muwatta, then Bukhari, then Tirmidhi / Abu Dawud, same kind of thing. You've got this nice level of like, okay, what are the main hadiths? I'm kind of aware of the main hadiths, right? And Imam al-Shafi'i, it's narrated from him with a Sahih chain transmission. Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, hadiths to do with halal, haram are about 500. All of them are with Malik, i.e. in the Muwatta, apart from 30, which are with Sufyan ibn Uyayna, right? So then basically, if you look at Imam Shafi'i's narration, of the Muwatta, you are basically looking at 80 to 90% of the most important hadiths to do with the most important fiqh discussions, right? And you're looking at them in the cleanest way, because you will find hadiths in Bukhari, in Muslim here, that there's like, well, there's an issue here. This narration's a bit funny. That narration's a bit funny. Whereas when you start with Muwatta, you don't really see that. You're starting with the asl, right? Maybe, for example, it's debated whether or not this hadith is the words of the Prophet or is it words of Sahabi. In the Muwatta, you'll find it as the words of a Sahabi. You can't go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like you're in a safe net. So there's a lot of safety, right? There's a lot of safety in the Muwatta, right? And this Imam Malik's general thing is that he's super conservative, right? He's super conservative, right? And so, there's probably lots of hadith that you could have there, but they're not there, right? Whereas you go into Bukhari, Muslim, there's way more questions to be asked about the hadiths, right? There's way more questions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we spoke about, inshallah, you can answer those. So now basically the world is traveling to study with Imam Malik. So you're going to have like 100 narrations of the Muwatta of Imam Malik, right? Hundreds, right? So then what happens is survival of the fittest, right? Imagine you come from Balkh, okay, in Central Asia with your friend, your cousin, and you go and sit with Imam Malik and you both narrate the Muwatta and you go back and your cousin got busy with life. So he didn't narrate. So his narration's gone, right? Because he was busy. And then you sat and narrated in Balkh, and your son narrated from your narration. And then there was a war and then stopped, right? So this is like the vicissitudes of life, right? Things happen, so like things just stop, right? So what happens in survival of the fittest, and you get basically today we'll have certain narrations of the Muwatta. So what you will find is you go through the 6 books and you basically see Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah. People will be narrating from somebody from Malik or somebody from Malik, right? So you can see their chain for the Muwatta basically, right? Whenever they're narrating them from Malik, that's their chain for the Muwatta. So you can look at that in the 6 books. Um, but and then we find books like, for example, commentaries on the Muwatta. Like,
I can't hear you.
go ahead, sorry.
Okay, now I can hear you. Okay. Sorry, your voice went out.
Yeah, it says my internet is unstable. Yeah. 1, 2, 3 is good.
Yes.
Okay. So basically then, so then we have basically you can find an indirect version of the Muwatta in the 6 books and find out who they're narrating from. And then you can find other versions as well. So for example, Imam Bukhari, he generally narrates the Muwatta through Abdullah ibn Maslama al-Qa'nabi, right? So this is al-Qa'nabi. So you can go through Bukhari and he'll say al-Qa'nabi or Abdullah bin Maslama, right? Says that's his narration for the Muwatta. Or you can also find it here. So this PDF that we have here, this is Biyuruwayat al-Qa'nabi. This is one narration. So this, I believe, this is the sheikh of, one of the shuyukh through which, Imam Bukhari got the hadiths of Imam Malik and Abu Dawud as well. I'm pretty sure you see Qa'nabi and Abu Dawud, if I remember correctly, right? Tirmidhi, for example, will narrate from Ma'an ibn Qazzaz, Ma'an ibn Isa al-Qazzaz. So that's another narration. So you could imagine, for example, 100 years, 200 years after Imam Malik, you'd be like, oh yeah, I have, where's your version of the Muwatta? It's here. Who's that from? Oh, that's from the Riwayat Ma'na ibn Isa al-Qazzaz, right? So look, Tirmidhi's narrating this hadith from Malik through that way, and that's another version. So you can imagine Ma'na ibn Isa al-Qazzaz sat and narrated the Muwatta. People come and they narrate that book, and then they get the content of that and they add that into their books. If that makes sense. So we have what we mentioned, Al-Qa'nabi. We mentioned Ma'ana ibn Isa al-Qazzaz. I don't think we have that book though. You could reconstruct it to some extent, but you don't have the whole thing. Okay. Now, specifically, I've given you a homework to find out with this narration is if you go back, if you go here, we actually have our narration for it. So it stops at a certain point. It's not complete. But here it says you basically got 3 chains. So here this is al-Hafidh al-Iraqi. So this is Zain ad-Din. Right, this is al-Hafidh al-Iraqi. So this is so our chain back to Iraqi, I don't know where that is. Right? But basically we have this, he says this is a manuscript. And there's somebody studying with al-Hafidh al-Iraqi who is in the 9th century, 8th century, something like that. Here he is, right? And it says this is the date that this book was written. So we have this manuscript which goes back 500 years. Okay? This manuscript says that al-Hafidh al-Iraqi said, and you can go through this, and for your homework, you will see that it all goes through Spain. basically. Most of it goes through Spain, I'm pretty sure. So here this is but you will see at a certain point, so that basically Al-Hafidh Iraqi, he has 3 chains, I think, for it. So he says, my sheikh said that his sheikh said that his sheikh said that his sheikh. So basically they're going back like from Al-Hafidh Iraqi back to Imam Malik. We're talking about 700-year chain, right? And here it has 1 chain, and it goes to it says حدثنا, it says Abu Mus'ab Ashar al-Zuhri. So this is not actually the chain. This is not actually this is actually a different version. So this chain here is a different version. That's actually, you can buy that book as well. So the Muwatta of Malik, as narrated by Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri, that's actually another version. So only that's one version. And then he mentions another chain, Akhbara Shaykh al-Islam, same person, right? And then he goes back with his chain all the way back. And here it says al-Ibri, right? This is the Iberian Peninsula. This is Spain, right? So a lot of these chains go through Spain. Yeah, and then this goes through Al-Qa'nabi. Okay, so he has these 2 chains. If you look at these 2 chains, there's something you'll notice about them, right? So go carefully through the 2 chains and try and find out the gender, okay, of the people who are narrating. You'll find something interesting, okay? And also look at the content, just flick through the book and get to the end of the book and try and find out what's missing in the book. But get to the end. So that we're supposed to, the Muwatta covers all the chapters of fiqh. It is in reality the first book on fiqh ever. So it's actually really important. Like if you can imagine studying fiqh in the time of Imam Shafi'i, there are no fiqh textbooks. You could go to study in Iraq with the Hanafis, right, with the Imam Muhammad and his students or his contemporaries, and you will get fiqh, but it's not really that organized in the same way. So the first clearest, like here's a footprint, like fiqh in chapters and topics and these things, is the Muwatta of Imam Malik. So it's a fiqh book, almost more than it is a hadith book. Right. Khair. So then he says, okay, so now we're going to start with the first hadith. So it says, Kitabu Mawaqit as-Salah, right? So it starts off with prayer times. Usually we find that the Muwatta has a different title here. It says Kitab Wuqut as-Salah, which is really weird because you don't usually say wuqut, you say awqat. So miqat, mawaqit, that's fine. Miqat, that means a place or a time. Mawaqit, plural, not a problem. But wuqut is really weird because you say waqt, awqat, not waqt, wuqut, normally. So, but the most narrations of the Muwatta, the chapter is bab wa kitab wuqut salah. Okay, so we find basically most narrations mentioning wuqut salah. So he says, القعنبي says قرأت على مالك بن أنس عن ابن شهاب الزهري أن عمر بن عبد العزيز رضي الله عنه إلى آخره. So what's happening here is he's specifying exactly how he narrates this hadith. He said, I went with my copy. So this is what they would do. Basically, you go to a student of the sheikh, okay, copy out the manuscript. So now you have your own thing, but then you read it to the teacher, right? So it basically doesn't matter if you copied it out incorrectly or not, because that doesn't count, right? You have your basic, you did your kind of like homework, which was you copied out the book, okay? Copied out, maybe you copied out back in Spain, back in Central Asia, back in Egypt, back in wherever you were, or maybe you did it when you arrived. So you turn up, and then you read it to the sheikh, and he's like, right, wrong, right? He's correcting it. He says, so that's why he specifically isn't saying that Imam Malik told me. He said, Imam Malik was listening to me. I read it to him. Okay, does that make sense? So this is the traditional way of learning. You have your own manuscript / print, and the sheikh is like laughing and says, it doesn't say that, right? So here's another piece of homework for you, Yaqub. Ahmad, are you still there? You have to leave. Oh, Zafar is here. right? So there was this print of this book, and it says Mas'alat al-Thadiyain. Mas'alat al-Thadiyain. Right? Do you know what that means, guys?
Yes.
Right? The issue of the two breasts. So the student is like, okay, it's a bit weird, but it's kind of not really sure what, you know. And so, because it says a thadiyeen. And so the sheikh is like, Habibi, it's not thadiyeen, it's a tadiyeen, right? So basically, whoever wrote the book, the editor, they made a huge blunder and they printed it incorrectly. But it doesn't matter because you're studying with shuyukh, right? So now what happens if you don't study with shuyukh? What happens?
You will think you have understanding and you have something correct, and you don't know what
You
your
don't.
mistakes are
Yeah.
actually.
So in the past, they didn't have nice, good, nice prints. Right? Today we have a nice print, has all these footnotes and all these things. Like, pretty good. But they didn't have that. But the thing is, you don't need that. It doesn't matter what the print is. Like one of my best classes we were doing with Sheikh Ali Hani was Hashid Khudri on Ibn Aqil on the Alfiya in Nahu. And there were so many mistakes, like ridiculous number of mistakes in the book. But it was actually good because then you have that time with the Sheikh's like, no, it doesn't say that, right? It's like this. And so the same thing in Hadith, Hadith, da, 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 and the Sheikh, like, no, Habibi, it's not like that. It's like this, like, oh, okay. So he's saying, qara'tu, right? That's how he narrates it. Imam al-Shafi'i, the way he narrates it is he says, akhbarana malikun, right? But I don't think that's what actually happened, right? When he says akhbarana malikun, Malik informed us, it's in a general sense. And that we find that with akhbarana, frequently they'll say that, like akhbarana, but in reality, you read to him. But here in Qa'nabi's version, he's explicitly saying, the Imam Malik was not speaking. I was speaking. I had my book. I was reading from my memory / from my book to the Sheikh, and the Sheikh was correcting me if I made a mistake, but I didn't, right? And so this is what also Imam Shafi did. Imam Shafi, he turned up and he was a young kid, and Imam Malik told him, he said, find somebody to read for you because you can't read, right? He's like, no, I can read. I can read very well. And he was Imam Shafi, Imam Malik was very impressed by the way that he read, because obviously the way that you read is indicative of the fact that you understand it, right? And also we all know that Imam Shafi's Arabic was amazing, right? Okay, so here he says قرأت على مالك. Imam Shafi has أخبرنا مالك. Okay, so it says قرأت على مالك ibn Anas, Imam Malik, عن ibn Shihab. So this is Muhammad ibn what's his name? Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Ubaidillah ibn Shihab az-Zuhri. Okay, but the important thing to know is that he's called Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, because you will see him in the 6 books as az-Zuhri, and you'll see him as Ibn Shihab, and you think that they're two different people, but they're not. Right? So here in Imam Shafi's narration it says An Ibn Shihab, right? So for a muhaddith, right, that's like saying, oh yeah, he's got a new beamer, right? What's a beamer?
A BMW.
BMW, right? So then I'm like, oh, I thought he bought a BMW. Like, Habibi, it's the same thing. Like you just don't know about cars, right? If it's called a Beamer, BMW, whatever, it's the same thing, right? He's got a new Benz. He's got a new Mercedes. So Benz and Mercedes-Benz is the same thing, but you didn't know that, right? So you put them as two, AI didn't know, right? You putting information, you're talking to your AI thing, and didn't know that you said, hey, whatever app you're gonna use, I'm just gonna read the list of things to you, stock, and I want you to put it in an Excel thing. So it doesn't know what it is, right? It doesn't know that a Beamer is the same as a BMW because you didn't tell it, right? So it puts a different category or whatever, right? And so this person is important, right? So he is a key powerhouse of fiqh and of hadith and of seerah and of tafsir, actually. So he's really, really important, Ibn Shihab Zuhri, right? Ibn Shihab Zuhri, I think he's born in the year like 50, something like that. He's born in the year 50, 51, something like that. And he passes away, I think, in like 120, something, 125. Okay. So he is a young tabi'i, right? A young tabi'i. Generally speaking, his shuyukh will be tabi'in. His shuyukh will not be sahaba, right? So he may narrate from young sahaba like Sayyidina Anas, right? So we'll see Malik from Ibn Shihab, from Anas. We'll see that. But that's rare. Usually, Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri is narrating from a tabi'i from a sahabi, or a tabi'i from another tabi'i from a sahabi. Okay, and that's very important to understand. Okay, so write it down. All right, double check his name. I'm pretty sure it's Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Ubaidillah ibn Shihab az-Zuhri. I'm pretty sure that's his name. Right. So his dad, whatever it is, his dad is not Shihab, right? When it says son of Shihab, that means like the great son, the great 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 grandson of Shihab. Okay, az-Zuhri. So he's narrating from some Sahaba, but mostly Tabi'een, or sometimes Tabi'een. Right? He's narrating from a young Tabi'een. Okay, so between him and the Prophet ﷺ, there'll be 1 to 2 to 3 people. Okay, does it make sense?
Yes.
With Imam Malik, there's 2 to 3 to 4 people. That's the kind of gap with Imam Malik, right? So why is that important? Because we're going to talk later on about the marasil of Zuhri. What if Zuhri says Qala Rasulullah? Right? It's like, hang a minute. Between you and the Prophet ﷺ, there is 1 to 2 to 3 people. Right? So when you said Qala Rasulullah, I mean, fine, if it was just a Sahabi, I don't know which of the Sahabi you narrate from, not a big deal. Right? Not a big deal. But if Zuhri is going to be narrating from somebody from the Prophet, and I was like, well, that's a problem. I need to know who this. I need a chain, right? So they call that the marasil of Zuhri. These are problematic. And why is that important? Because Zuhri is a key source for Sirah. So you open Sirah Ibn Ishaq, Sirah Ibn Hisham, Sirah of Ma'mar ibn Rashid, the Sirah of Musa ibn Uqba, right, contemporary of Imam Malik. And they're going to say, so for example, Imam Malik's contemporary Musa ibn Uqba will say, Ibn Shihab said, this happened. So hang on a minute, what do you mean this happened? So you were there, Zuhri was there, you were born, you were born 40 years approximately after the Prophet then passed away, and you're saying this happened? So you're not an eyewitness, right? Nor are you possibly even narrating from an eyewitness. That's very important to understand. So if you look in the Sirah, you will see a lot of that. There'll be like, here's a list of the people who died in this battle. Like a list of 500 names. Like what? Not 500 names, but like 100 names. It's like, well, you were there? Okay. So I'm not saying that he's wrong, and I'm not saying that he's a liar, but I'm saying that that is not super reliable because it's not a complete chain transmission. We don't know who he's narrating from, right? We could have a good opinion saying, presumably he's narrating from people he trusts, and if he trusts them, I trust them, presumably, right? But what if it was something strange? Okay? What if it was something strange? So another piece of homework is research. You can just Google it now, actually. Google it right now. Hadith considering suicide. Sahih Bukhari. Right, Google it, see what comes up. Hadith considering suicide, Bukhari. See what comes up. Zafar, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, it's keep dropping out.
I keep dropping my voice.
Yeah, sometimes, and I keep dropping.
Yaqub, is it my end?
No, you only dropped for like 5 seconds about 5 minutes ago.
Okay,
You're
khair.
okay.
Okay. Okay, so what did you find, Yaqub?
Uh, Whoever intentionally swears falsely by religion.
Let's have a look.
So, no, this is a man was afflicted with wounds and he committed suicide, and so Allah said, "My
There's
slave
another
has
one. That's
caused
another
death."
one.
Um,
Hadith. Okay, here we go. Try this in Hadith. Prophet
He'll be
considering suicide. It's in Bukhari.
he's should be thr
Okay, so
shall
here,
keep on throttling himself in the hellfire forever.
I got this one that comes up with me, okay? So it says reports. Where is this? Reports that suggest the Prophet ﷺ contemplated suicide are flawed in both their claims of narration. Okay, so it goes da 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 da. No, I don't want this. So it says the following. So it says Az-Zuhri, right? This is Az-Zuhri. He says that Urwa ibn Zubayr, the nephew of Aisha, said that Aisha said, the revelation ceased for a while, for as long as the Prophet ﷺ became sad. According to the reports that have reached us, uh, he was so sad that on several occasions he wanted to throw himself off the top of the mountain. So what's happening here is it's just Ibn Shihab. So Ibn Shihab narrates from the nephew of Aisha, from Aisha, that the revelation stopped and the Prophet ﷺ was very sad. End of quote. Then Ibn Shihab himself says, allegedly, the Prophet ﷺ was considering suicide because he was so sad. So now you're looking at Bukhari like, oh my God, Bukhari is crazy. He mentions the Prophet ﷺ was considering suicide, right? So that's all it is. So in reality, what you have is a Zuhri who was born 40 years after Rasulullah passed away is saying that. What are his sources? I don't know what his sources are. Okay. So therefore it's not a big deal. I don't need to go and like have a whole, how is it possible the Prophet was considering suicide? Oh, so yeah. Didn't mention his sources. I don't know who that is. Right? Does that make sense? Go ahead, Yaqub.
Clarified that this wasn't for me. Like it's if you read the narration, he didn't make it a statement of Urwa bin Zubayr. No?
Yeah, he didn't. What does that mean then? It means that Zuhri is super reliable, right? He's really reliable. But I just don't know who he's narrating from. So here, so if Zuhri says that Anas says that the Prophet said, I say, okay. If Zuhri says that Urwa said that Aisha said, like, yeah, I believe that. But Zuhri said that it is said, who is it? Who is making that claim? Who is making that? I don't know. Right? So now when you come to the specifics of the seerah, you will find lots of sections where it says Zuhri said this happened. You're like, oh, okay. So I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not super reliable, right? Just don't know who the Zuhri might say the shuyukh have told me. Who are they? Right? I don't know who they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does it come usually that if someone who's reliable doesn't name their asnad, that's because they assume that they're known to be reliable? Like
It can be and it cannot be. Right? So like for example, An-Nakhai, Ibrahim An-Nakhai, okay? He's the student of the students of Abdullah Mas'ud, right? And one of the greatest of the muftis of the Tabi'in, right? And he's kind of the builder of the Hanafi school. A lot of his fatwa, it's like copy and paste, that is the Hanafi school. So he's like so he said, whenever I say so and so told me that Abdullah Mas'ud said, whenever I give you my source, that means like I'm mentioning it for a reason. I'm like, hey, it's his responsibility. It might be wrong, you know? Like, I'm not saying that it's raining in Chicago. I'm just saying that Yaqub said that, you know? And so Yaqub said that it's raining in Chicago. It's like, yeah, but I don't know if it is. I'm just saying, you work out if he's true or not. So then Ibrahim Nakhai says, when I just say Abdullah Mas'ud said, that means I heard it from multiple people. So sometimes when they mention the source, it's to show that it's questionable. Sometimes it mentions the source to show you that it's reliable. Sometimes they don't mention the source specifically because it's not reliable. Sometimes they mention the source and it is reliable. One of the Salaf was asked this question. He's like, what's your hadith? Where's your source for that? He says, what do you think? I went to a bar and asked somebody for hadiths. Like, get out of my face. Like, he was annoyed when they were asking for his chain transmission. You know what I'm saying? So you can't make a universal statement that whenever they don't mention this, whenever they mention the source, it's problematic. Whenever they don't mention the source, it's fine. You can't do that. It's that in reality, you need to know like how those people work, what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So as one of my teachers, Sheikh Ahmad Snowbird, he said every single hadith is its own world. Every single hadith narrator is its own world. You need to know that world. So you can't make these general statements. So this is one of the problems with hadith is it's almost like geography. Like you can't say, oh yes, Central Asian countries. Like which Central Asian country? Like they're not all the same. Geographically, politically, culturally, linguistically, religiously. It's like everyone's like different, right? It's like a different dynamic, different everything. So you can't make these generalizations. Like math, you can make generalizations. Aqidah, so Aqidah is easy to learn. Math is easy to learn. Fiqh is easy to learn to some extent, right? Grammar is easy because you're making these general statements. Whereas hadith, oh man, you need to know every single world. The world of Imam Malik is different to the world of Hamad ibn Salama. You can't overgeneralize. You get some generalizations, but you can't overgeneralize. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So Zuhri relating with no chain, problematic, can be. Malik narrating with no chain, totally fine. Why? Because he's just super strict. So it's like what? So in hadith we study these, we do these generalizations. What is a sahih hadith? What is a da'if hadith? What is this? What is a mursal hadith? Is a mursal hadith a proof or not? General. But in reality it's not like that. In reality you need to deal with the specifics. That's why you might find a sahih hadith and we don't act upon it. And you might find a da'if hadith and we do act upon it. Right? Like politics versus political science, right? You just study political science. Does that make you a good politician? No. It's two different things, right? Physics and mechanics and being a mechanic. Three different worlds, right? Three totally different worlds. So it's a tricky thing. Anyway, let's wrap up. So then it says, Malik narrates from Ibn Shihab Zuhri that whenever we see the word that, we have to find out, did Ibn Shihab Zuhri actually study or sit in the presence of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? Because it says, Malik said that, Ibn Shihab said that. So so the word that is like saying is not equivalent to putting a chain transmission. Because Ibn Shihab, maybe he didn't study with him, right? Yaqub said, the Farid said that Plato said, right? So Yaqub, you might find there's evidence that Yaqub heard Farid's words. There's a video evidence of it in this YouTube video, right? But when Farid said that Plato said, that doesn't mean that I studied with Plato. That was what, more than 2,000 years ago, right? Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. So Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is going to come up in the Muwatta quite a lot. So why is he going to come up? Because he was originally the righteous faqih governor of Medina. So he is a politician as a governor, and he's also a faqih, right? And a righteous faqih. Okay. Later on, he's going to become the Khalifa, right? He was Khalifa for 2 years, I believe, right? But originally, he is an Umayyad governor of Medina. And we're going to find this in the time of Umar Abdul Aziz, this used to happen, i.e., he gathered the muftis of Medina, he gathered the qadis, and they used to do this, he used to do that. Okay? That's where he's going to come up quite a lot. And then it's going to mention about delaying the prayer. And we're going to see that this discussion here in reality is being mentioned. Why? Because it's a point of contention between the Hijazis and the Iraqis. The Hijazis say we pray Asr early. The Iraqis say no, we pray Asr late. Right? So that's why it's coming up here. Right? So people don't discuss about obvious things. So therefore, generations afterwards, when you're reading their books, those things that are not obvious to you might not be there. So Imam Malik's not going to say, oh, by the way, you have to make wudu before you pray. Like, what? That's kind of a stupid question, isn't it? Why would you make wudu? I mean, why would you not make wudu, right? He's just jumping into the point of contention. Those Iraqis that we meet on Hajj, they keep saying, no, you pray Asr late, and say, no, you guys are wrong, right? So that's why he's going to mention this thing here. Okay, so generally speaking, the Muwatta will bring up points of contention, not things that we all agree upon, generally speaking. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, I have to stop here. And you have your homework, inshallah. I think I added a piece of homework as well. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.